Hey everybody, what happens when you just pick the top 10 best-selling books on Goodreads of 2024 and reach out to all their authors with no plan and no familiarity? Let's find out, shall we? All right, so about 3 weeks ago, I decided I was bored one night, and I'm like, everybody's always talking about the top 10 lists, but I don't really like making top 10 lists, so I decided I'm going to go back. I'm going to look for the top 10 bestsellers of a specific year. There's a caveat to that. I'll get to it in a second. So I looked up, I Googled, and actually what I came across was a list of the top 10 books on Goodreads of 2024, which I believe, do not quote me on this, it's not necessarily that somebody read that book during 2024, but they added that to their shelf, either their read shelf, so they did read it, or their want to read shelf, so they were interested in it. And that gave me a top 10 list to start with. I thought about not mentioning any of the authors just because I was trying to avoid throwing somebody under the bus based on the results, but I've already told you what I was looking for or what I was looking at. So why make you do the extra work? So what I won't tell you do is what response I got back from each, but I will tell you who the authors were. I was a little surprised that they are 100% female authors, but all right, top 10. Kristen Hanna, duh. Emily Henry, Abby Jimenez, Ashley Elston, Allison Esbach, hope I pronounced that right, Liz Moore, Frida McFadden, Sarah J. Maas, let's face it, you recognize some of these names, Allie Hazelwood, and Sally Rooney. I won't tell you what responses I got back from each, but I will go over some details. I will also say that I actually had to go to the top 12 books because Frida took up 3 spots. Leave some space for the rest of the authors, Frida. Come on now. All right. So I sent this out late. It was April 29th. Sent it out late at night. So, of course, I'm not expecting any responses that night. Normally, I send these things out first thing in the morning, but once I made a decision, I couldn't help myself. Sent that out. I will have to say props to the authors. 9 of the authors, I found the person to contact about ARCs, author interviews, stuff like that on their websites. Made life really, really simple. The 10th one, I just went and I looked up who they were published under and I contacted that publisher. I also have to say sometimes you can get an author's direct email address. Not that they're always the one answering it, but at least it's a personal email address. Did not work for the top 10. Every single one, I went through their publicist of the publisher, for a lack of a better word. I think that's what you want to call it. All right. So, sent that on the 29th. 3 of them responded the very next day. So, by April 30th, I already had 3 responses. Kind of what you assume on an immediate response. 2 of them right off the bat, like, we're not doing any interviews right now, any events. And this goes into one of the issues with this particular challenge that I'm going to use to teach you something, because a lot of this stuff is not how I normally do it. But I wanted to take out my current how I do things so that I could show you apples to apples what you might run into the first time you send some stuff out. Then I'm going to tell you how to do it differently. All right. So 2 of those were like, not right now. One of them I did get, we're not doing anything right now, but there's a book dropping such and such time, foreshadowing, and, reach out back to us when that gets a little closer. All right. So chilled, did my other stuff. A week later, May 5th, I sent out a follow email to the 7 that had not responded yet. Let's remember, publishers, publicists, I still don't know if that's the correct term, but I'm using it. They're busy. You're not the only person emailing these people, especially authors of a certain level. People are also trying to get them on for 5 minutes on Good Morning America, where they'll talk about almost anything but the book. But, you're also dealing with other book talkers, bookstagrammers, booktubers. We are not alone here. There's a lot of us. Many of us, we don't even know each other. All right. So again, there's also the dreaded spam filter. I have talked to people I personally know, so I know they're not just ignoring me. Hopefully, I'm looking at you. But have told me, like, 3 or 4 months later, like, oh crud, I just found your email, it was in my spam folder. So I've had authors on that have told me that I was in their spam folder. So you will sometimes end up in a spam folder. That's all there is to it. Life happens. Understand that. Don't take it personally if you don't get a response. But that's also why I follow up, because eventually sometimes you get through. So anyhow, emailed the 6 that I hadn't heard from back from yet, and 3 of those responded very, very close, either that day or the next day. 2 that day, 1 the next day. None of those were a go. Wasn't one. It was the polite no's where it's like, we're not doing anything at this time. However, and we'll get to this in a minute, that is also very, very true. Hold that thought. So then a week later, on May 12th, I sent out to the 4 I hadn't heard back from yet. I did hear back from 1. That was also another very polite maybe. Not going on right now, but maybe when we have another book come out, we'll keep you in mind. So what did I do wrong here? Those of you who've been on here for half a minute already know what I did wrong here. Those of you who are watching this for the first time, let me explain. Pick a date and time, preferably around a laydown date. Take some of that decision away from the author/publisher. The reason I usually, and by usually I mean like 90+% of the time, unless it's an author that I've just really, really want to have on, and I don't care if they've got a book coming out, I pick a date and time around a laydown date. So my email is going to be something along the lines of, good morning, so-and-so, whoever that person is. If I've got the direct email, I'll use the author's name. If I don't, I will talk to, if I can get the specific publicist name, I'll use that. And usually I can, occasionally, especially when I first started. And I'm only going to throw them under the bus because I love them. But every publisher, for instance, Tor Publicity, has a generic one that is then supposed to route to the proper person. So if I've got the publicist name, I'll use their name. If I don't, I'll just say good morning, and I'll leave it at that. Don't try to decide, who they are, or how personal they're going to be. Just very, very generic, very professional. Go on. And then I'll say, my name is Edward. I've got a YouTube channel. I always put the channel trailer down at the bottom. If you're starting out new, you're not going to have a channel trailer yet. More than likely, you can make one up, but you're not going to have one like I do, which is a montage of some of the authors I've had on, which I happen to really, really like, but that's just me. Hopefully y'all like it too. If you're watching this, you probably had to go through it. You've probably seen it. If not, go to my channel. You'll see the trailer. That goes out to everybody, but that's down at the PS stage. But I tell them who I am. I tell them what I do. And then I do something very specific to that author. What I like to do, and what is going to increase your percentages through the roof, is I see that book X, or however you want to word it, is dropping June 30th. We're making up a date. I didn't look ahead of time, so if June 30th is not a Tuesday, it's probably not dropping June 30th. 99% of books drop on Tuesdays. James Patterson books drop on Mondays. Anything that drops on a different date is an outlier. All right, there you go. And now you're going to change this up a little bit depending on how you do it. I know a lot of people do live streams with their authors. That's what I used to do all the time. A lot of people do recorded videos with their authors, so they have that chance to edit, etc., and so forth. And they also don't have to keep track of chat while they're talking to the author. They can focus on the author. Both are valid. I do a mixture at this point in time in my career, like I'm getting paid for this. But anyhow. But yeah, whichever you do, let them know. I usually let authors know that I do both, so that, whichever one works for them. But again, if it's a live stream, I try to get it to drop right before that book. So if it drops on a Tuesday, if June 30th was a Tuesday, then, I usually say like, hey, are you, June 29th? I let them know my availability. I don't make them reach back out to me and say, hey, are you free such and such a date? I usually say something along the lines like, I'm in the central time zone. I do have a full time job, so I'm usually available after 6 p.m. because that gives me time to come home, have dinner with my wife, etc., and so forth. And, or, if you wanted to do it on a weekend, then, I've got a little more flexibility. Weekends are big for the few times that you have to talk to somebody outside of your time zone. Since I do live in the middle of the States, for instance, I've had Tchaikovsky on, I've had Sarah Reese Brennan on, and so they are in the UK and Ireland. Don't want to get those two mixed up. They get very upset. They're in that time zone. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's a big time difference. So if I had them on at 6 p.m., it would be midnight for them. Not everybody wants to stay up that late. I get that. So we usually go for the weekends. Occasionally, with my work's permission, yes, I have had one during the day, and I just take an extended lunch hour. But work knows that. Don't try to sneak that past them. With your luck, that's the time your boss is going to call you. He needs to know that you're busy interviewing somebody, and that you're off the clock. All right. Anyhow, so that is kind of what I aim for. Definitely give them options. Tell them when you're available. Don't make them guess. Don't make them try to figure out. Well, I don't know when do you want to do this. If they have to reach back out to you with a when do you want to do this, that is a wasted conversation that could have been answered the first time. And who knows what they're deciding on while they're waiting for your response. So, again, make it as easy as possible for the author and the publicist to make a decision. Maybe your time zones or maybe your time and date doesn't work for them. So you feel like, I want to give them every opportunity. We'll get to that one in a second. Don't do that on the initial. You want them to be able to make that decision because you're going to come across much more professional, and publicists and authors, they don't want to waste an email going back and forth with you on this. Don't do that. Anyhow, give them the options. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. There are hundreds and thousands, probably not hundreds of thousands, hundreds and thousands of authors out there. There is no way for me to interview every author I want to interview this year. I can't do it. There is not enough time. I refuse to interview an author if I haven't read a book. One of their books, let me be specific. So, again, I'm not going to get to all of them because I also have to have time to read books and, mow the lawn. Things like that. Life happens. If somebody says no, that's fine. We will follow up with them later. That's going to be my part number 2. Number 2, I don't follow up the next week. I don't. Even, first of all, I keep an eye out 3 to 4 months minimum down the road. If I want to have an author on, I reach out to them at least that much time ahead of time so that even if they do want to be on, and we'll get to those specifics in a minute as well, we've got time to make that decision, time to figure out where we're going to fit. Because even if you tell them when you want to do it, then maybe that not work, they might come back with you. For instance, and it took me years to get to a point where we could both have some free time because she's very busy. I've got the V. Schwab interview coming out next month because her book drops in June. I reach out to V. Schwab because she was one of my Mount Rushmores of the authors I hadn't had on yet that I really, really wanted to have on because I've been following her since Darker Shades of Magic came out. And I usually reach out to her about every time a book drops. She knows who I am, but I don't bug her every week either. So, because I'd reached out to her ahead of time and we'd been talking back and forth for years, they got back with me and like, the bigger the author, the busier they are going to be around their drop-down date. So first of all, doing a live stream the night before for an author of, I don't want to say caliber because that makes it sound like I'm saying how good of a writer are. There are some really, really good unknown writers. And to me, there's also some very, very popular writers that I don't think are as good of authors, not including Victoria. I love Victoria. She knows this. She's already been on. I'm not just saying that. But so when I say caliber, I just mean like a level of popularity. There's no way. She's got too many requests on her time. There are book tours going on. They don't have time to set aside an hour or so to chat with me in the middle of a book tour. And also, let's face it, I'm going to say this for almost every author, but there's going to be some outliers. But almost every author on a book tour wants, if they've got a day off, they want that day to relax and decompress and not have to worry about an interview for that time. That is their chill time during a very, very busy, let's face it, a lot of us like to travel, but do we want to hop on a plane every 2 days to get to the next stop? No. If you got a day off, you want to enjoy it, you want to relax. So, again, certain level of author popularity, it's going to be very unlikely to fit you in on that live stream the day before. So, because of the fact that we talked about it so early out, what happened was is we managed to find a time way in advance. I'd gotten the ARC, of course. This doesn't work without the ARC. That's a me thing. If there's every time I reach out to a new author, one of the things I put in my email is like, if I can get my hands on an ARC, I would love to have this interview and drop it right before the book comes out. If there's no ARC for this particular book, then about a week or so after, so I've got time to read the book, I let the author, I let the publicist know that I am going to read the book before I talk to the author. I'm not going to be just somebody on there to talk generically to an author. We're there, A, because I want to talk to the author, but B, because we want to push their book. That really kind of is the symbiosis of the whole thing. If I'm not pushing their book, why do they need to be on a live stream with me? They could just talk. They could. Well, these days, heck, half of them have their own podcasts and stuff anyhow, or TikToks or Instagrams, or they could just call me up. They don't need to do an interview. So anyhow, that's my point, is the fact that in this case, we got together way in ahead at a time. I'd already read the ARC. We got to have a great interview, which you will get to see soon. It's coming up in June, I promise. But we got to do that early so that it was before she got hammered with all of the book tours and all of the other requests. And yes, is it killing me that we did this interview in April and I still haven't been able to share it with people? Yes, it is killing me just a little. Just a little. But, again, whatever you can do to make things easiest for the author. And again, this also comes back to the follow-up time. By asking so early, I don't need to bug them every week because I really, really want to have them on. First of all, that looks desperate. B, pushy. C, they're busy. Chill. If you didn't ask them that early, for a lot of authors, you've asked too late. So keep an eye on your favorite book. Keep an eye out on your favorite authors. Know when their next book is coming out. And like I said, give them at least that 3-month cushion to see if they can fit you into their schedule. So if I don't hear back after that initial one, and let's say they do have a book coming up that I want to talk to them about, I will send them one request. If they have not responded, I will send them one more request about a month, not a week, like I did for this contest, about a month ahead of time. Not ahead of time, a month after the fact. Words happened. A, you're not so pushy, but B, you're also reiterating the fact that I'm not just shotgunning this to 1,000 authors. I really am interested in talking to you about this book. Again, that'll help set you apart from some of the other people who are just desperate to get that author interview on. Number 3, you know what? Actually, let me do 2.B. If you get a no, and a lot of times it may be a real no, but most of the time it's probably going to be that very polite no, like, we're not doing any at this time, or we don't have time right now, our schedule's full, whatever the case may be. I respond with a thank you to whoever responded, whether it be the author or the publicist, usually the publicist, and just thank them for their time. Say, hey, no, I understand that. I appreciate you getting back to me. Consider this an open invitation. Now, I'm letting them know it's an open invitation. 99% of the time, by the time the next book comes out, that publicist is not going to remember me or that I said they had an open invitation. But I do let them know that the invitation is open, because what I'm going to do with a few, I won't do this if they're a very, very, very prolific author, because I don't want to bug them every couple of months. But the average author, and I use that term not disparagingly, I'm just saying like kind of like the mean, is putting out maybe a book a year, maybe a book every 2 years, especially the ones who aren't doing this as a full-time job yet. I'm going to reach out to them when that next book comes out. Again, if it's somebody very prolific, and again, not throwing anybody into the bus, but Patterson, for instance, Seanan McGuire, there are certain authors where that you're gonna see 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books from them in a year. They just are. I don't know how they do it. They're on a different level. Well, maybe we know how Patterson does it. I don't know how Seanan does it. But there are some authors that are very prolific, and I'm not going to bug them 8 or 9 times a year. So usually on a situation like that, the very few times that this would come up, these are outliers. It'll be like when a specific book's coming out that I'm interested in. For instance, Jim Butcher, when he came on, I had read all of the Codex Alera series. I had read the beginning of the Cinderspire series. And I had read the early Dresden Files. I had not read all of them. Does this mean that you can't jump in the middle? No, it does not. But to make it more obvious that I was actually knew what I was talking about, when I finally did get Jim Butcher on, I got him for book 2 of the Cinderspire series, because I've already read book 1. And then, of course, I read both the novella, and I had an arc of the book 2 Olympian Affair that I got to read before we talked. So I knew the entirety of that series. If we wanted to talk about anything that happened in the first book or even the novella, I was good to go. If I had waited until, for instance, 12 Moons, I think is the next one that's coming out, I would have been able to read 12 Moons and gotten up to date, but I would have been missing a lot of background in the middle. I knew the early Harry Dresden stuff, but I had not kept up. There's too many. It's not that I don't love Harry Dresden. Don't get me wrong. I'm currently doing a reread of it right now, and I've already caught up to where I had been at that time and have moved well beyond that. I'm planning on keep reading this. I'm doing it on audiobook until James Marsters, by the way, does an excellent Dresden. He is the narrator. Going to do this all the way through 12 Moons as I go through. But I would have had way too much holes in my knowledge to, I feel, have done a great review of that book. Not review, a great conversation about that book. So again, if you've got somebody if you've kept up with the series, obviously any time is a great time to talk to the author. If they've got a big series and you haven't read it all, but they've got a standalone coming out or a new series coming out, that is a great time to get them in, because you're just as caught up with everybody else. So, and if you've read the arc, you're actually ahead of the game on a lot of people. So, just saying. Also, if you're looking at author interviews, also a great way to get a hold of arcs. Because if you've got an author interview coming up, and most of the time you're going to go through the publisher, so they already know. The times that you go through the individual author, either they're going to have access to it, or they're going to be able to tell their publisher, or you can tell their publisher, hey, I'm getting, and again, I'm just going to pick somebody who's a friend of mine. I'm not teasing anybody, but Brian Freeman has a book coming out in October. I hope I didn't screw that up. I think it's October. I'm 99% sure it's October. And I can reach out to his publisher and say, hey, I'm going to have Brian on in October. I don't have that on my calendar yet, by the way, because I don't have the date set. But if you've got an arc for that, I would love to be able to read it ahead of time before we have the conversation. That is almost don't lie to anybody about it. But if you actually have that author scheduled, that is definitely going to help you get on the list for the ARC, even if it's the e-ARC. I do love having a physical ARC just because I can have a book. This isn't an ARC, but I'm just saying. I can have a book on the shelf behind me during the interview, which is a plus. And sometimes they will help you get the physical ARC. But I also tell publicists, I know there's a limited number of ARCs to go around. I am fine with an e-ARC just as long as I can get the book read before I have the interview. It's a plus. It helps. That's a side note. Just letting you know. So what do? We've reached out. We've given the author a time or the publicist a time. We've followed them up in a respectful manner, in a respectful time frame, not to bug them all the time. But maybe we didn't get them in. Step 3. It's step 3 in this. For if you're a brand new one and you haven't started doing author interviews yet, this is actually probably a good step 1. Develop relationships. This is not just a business thing, and this is not just. I don't mean this in like, get friendly or chummy or whatever with specific people because of what they can do for you. What I mean is this: if your name sticks out to the author or the publicist, because they already know who you are, as long as it's not infamous, how much better do you think your chances are than somebody else? I follow a lot of the authors that I love. I follow them on their different social medias. Am I on every social platform? Probably, although don't ask me what my Mastodon login was. I don't remember, and I'm not going back to MySpace anytime soon. And I'm rarely on Facebook or Twitter. But I do check in once in a while. I do post once in a while if I see something from an author. I also follow the publishers. If I see something from an author or a publisher that I actually like, I'll like it. I don't like things just to like them, but I do make sure that I do like the things I like. That may be the worst sentence I've ever said, but you know what I mean. And the other thing is if I have a response to something, like some of my favorite authors, especially the ones I've already had on, it's not like I have an author on and I just forget them. I still email some of them on time to time about stuff. I still follow their channels. I will, if I see something. Now, some of them maybe I haven't talked to lately because maybe they're busy and they haven't posted anything, or there's just been nothing that I feel like I really want to share with them that's very specific to them. Again, I don't want to do this just to do this. I do this because I enjoyed something. Somebody's got a book coming out in paperback and somebody's talking about it, and maybe I had the author on when the hardcover came out. I'll be like, can confirm this book was excellent. I just get that out there. I think that helps their social media when people are commenting. I think it helps the people who are like looking at something like, well, do I want to read this? And they see a bunch of people down on things like, oh yeah, this book was great, loved it. If I didn't love the book, I don't respond to that at all. Don't be negative, especially don't be negative in person. By the way, side note, if you have ever done a bad review for a book, and I'm not saying people shouldn't do bad reviews because you want to do honest reviews, don't tag the author in a 1-star review. Don't do it. Just no. Bad reviewer. All right. Sorry, soapbox, over. But again, I follow them, I tag them if it's something legit. But again, be respectful. Everybody knows my personality. Occasionally I can get away with something a little funny, especially if the author already knows me. Maybe don't lead with funny all the time. Yeah, my wife wants me to take that one into account a little more often. But again, getting your name out in front of them and showing that you actually enjoy their work, that you are professional. Don't. There's a time to be funny, and then there's certain things where you can say something funny between you and your friends, but you don't say it on a public-facing channel. Again, learn the limits. If you need to do that, that needs to be step 1 before you do any of these other things. But again, develop relationships. For instance, and I was originally going to put this at the end, but I'm going to put this in now because I think it's a perfect spot. When I did this top 10, all of these authors, I'm 99% sure of. I can't remember now which all the publishers I went through. I don't necessarily have relationships with any of these publishers because I usually stick to very specific genres. I usually do fantasy, I usually do sci fi, I usually do some horror, I do some mystery. I basically do genre stuff. Have I done stuff outside of that? Yes, I've had Kelly Bishop on when she wrote her memoir, Third Gilmore Girls. I've had Richard Paul Evans on, who does all of the basically Hallmark Channel books. We joked about that when he was on, by the way. I'm not throwing him under the bus. A lot of if you see a Richard Paul Evans, Richard Paul Evans. I'm second guessing myself now. If you see one of his books out there, there's a good chance it's been made into a Hallmark movie. He does a lot of Christmas themed books. Anyhow, but again, not fantasy, not sci-fi, not horror. Some of you may think romance is horror, but no, not horror. So again, a lot of these authors that were in that top 12 are usually considered more of the either regular fiction or maybe even lead a little bit romance. Obviously, Sarah J. Maas. She's romantasy. We get that. So it's not really in my wheelhouse. So I haven't dealt with a lot of these publishers. There's certain publishers that are like very, or at least imprints that are very specific to those genres. Being in the fantasy and sci-fi books, I do a lot of stuff with Tor. I reach out a lot to Orbit Books. I do have a little bit of conversation back and forth with some of the, what do you call them? The specialty presses like Levidian Publishing. I've talked to them a few times about stuff. Curious King, I keep abreast of them. I dealt with, a couple of those. Tor is probably my main go-to. The Tor imprint under Macmillan. Tor Nightfire. Maybe even Bramble a little bit, but not very much. But again, like for instance with Tor, I have those type of relationships where I would have no problem right now just emailing somebody at Tor and saying, hey, so-and-so's got a book coming out, blah, blah, blah. Would love to have him on the channel. And that person's probably going to get back to me within a day or two. They know me. I deal with them all the time. I've got that type of relationship. If I was doing more of the, I don't want to say generic fiction because that makes it sound like it's, blah, every day. What I mean is non-genre fiction. Whatever you want to call that. Some people call it literary fiction. But then I would probably start having to, contact those other ones more often. But again, familiarity, part of it is just the fact that I talk to Tor all the time. They have some of my favorite authors. They definitely deal with some of my favorite genres. And we've just, over the last year or two, developed a relationship. That's all there is to it. I'm not saying that, they call me ahead of time before any other content creator. I'm sure I'm on a list with a lot of other people, but I am on the list. So there you go. That's the thing of is getting yourself on the list. And I apologize right now on this one. This is actually my second recording of this video because the first time I realized I had an echo that I'm hoping is gone this time. So I don't remember if I mentioned this earlier or if I mentioned it on the first take, but there is a limited number of people that But again, all I'm trying to say is if you have a certain author that works with a specific publisher, start doing those type of conversations, reaching out. Have that, don't want to say a generic email, but have that like specific email template type of thing. You don't want it to look like you're just dragging and dropping names into a file, but you're going to want to make sure that you don't forget something. So again, have that somewhat of a template where you tell them, who you are. So again, like I'm saying, develop those relationships, and this actually ties into my fourth one. Are there big YouTubers that don't stick to a genre? Or book talkers or bookstagrammers? Yes, there are. Not throwing anybody under the bus, but I know like Jack Edwards, he's not really a genre guy. He talks about a little bit of everything. He's also really good looking and has an accent, the bastard. But yeah, he's got a huge following, and he also sticks very much to that. I also feel like, and I could be wrong on this, I don't feel like, and I apologize to Jack because he's very big and I haven't followed all of his stuff. I don't feel like he does a lot of author interview type things. He just does like book reviews and top tens, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying that's not what this video is aimed at. I think when you start doing the general fiction, there's almost too much to keep track of. And there's also a lot of people, because those authors are so widely popular, it's also hard for you as a smaller content creator or a newer content creator to worm your way into that inside circle where you can get them on your channel. So sticking to a genre helps. Number one, it makes you more, it's more easy to be, it's more easy. It's easier not to do this first thing in the morning when you had caffeine. It's easier to be more of an expert when you stick to a specific genre. It's definitely easier to keep up with everything that's going on. Also, a lot of the genre ones, by definition, there are some very popular genre fiction authors. However, they're probably still smaller, with a few exceptions. They're probably still smaller than a literary fiction bestseller. Your favorite sci-fi author, no matter how well they're doing in the sci-fi genre, is probably not getting John Grisham or James Patterson type numbers. And they're also not getting James Patterson and John Grisham levels of requests. So it's a little bit easier for you to get on what is probably a much smaller schedule for that author. If that author's got 30 requests for when their book comes out, yes, they're probably not going to be able to do all 30, but they're going to be able to do a bigger percentage of them than John Grisham getting that hundreds or thousands of requests when his next book comes out. There's only so much time in a day, and there's only so many days in a year. It's just by numbers, just by statistics, just by ratios, you've got that better chance. And also because you're one of a fewer number of people asking, you've also got that better chance of, hey, I've heard from this person before. And once you get through that door the first time, you can also say, hey, I've seen this person do an interview before. I liked what they did. My author got done with this person and said it was a great experience. So that I didn't have that on the list, but that's going to be step 5. Make it a great experience. Number 1, make it easy for the author. Number 2, I've gotten to the point now, my first few, and again, everybody's first few sucks. I apologize to Shannon all the time for being my first author interview. Again, thank you, Shannon, for responding to me when you had no business responding to me. She was my first. I made all my mistakes with her. Hopefully I've gotten better since then. But one of the things I've done is I've also developed, there's a generic list of questions that I ask every author, at least the first time that they're on now. I might mix it up once they've been on the second time. But there's a list of questions I can send an author that's never been on my channel before. Not the book-specific ones, because I usually send these out early enough that I haven't read the book yet. But they can kind of see, this is what I'm going to ask you. Again, another thing that helps the author, because there's going to be questions that they're not going to be blindsided by. Again, make it great. Have fun. I don't mean make fun of the author, but I mean enjoy the conversation. Don't get me wrong. This is a me thing. There are very, very good interviewers, better than me, who aren't up there to be the author's friend. They're not up there to make the author laugh. They're up there to ask the questions, get the answers. Very professional. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. If that's your personality, go for it. Wouldn't work for me. I try to have fun. There's a reason that in my channel trailer, yes, I did very. It's obvious. Most of those interviews were 40 minutes to up to 2 hours long. I did very specifically pick those specific snips of videos to put in that channel trailer. But it's also to show that in every single one of those conversations, I've had a moment that has made the author laugh or made the author smile. And that is just my personality. I want that author to get done and have enjoyed it so that they know that if they ever want to come back and they're looking for somebody's channel to be on, I had fun with this guy. We're gonna have fun again, and I'm going to enjoy that half hour, 2 hours that I'm taking out of my day. So that's a me thing. Again, that's partially based on my personality. But whatever your personality is, make sure that that author, at the end of the day, even if they're not laughing a mile a minute, make sure that they at least enjoyed being on your channel. And also, every author is a little different. Not every author is going to have that type of personality where they want to joke around the entire time. And after you do a few of these, you'll also get to learn to read your audience. But yeah, just make them, like I said, make them comfortable in coming back to you. Not only does that give you a chance to have them back on, and I have had a few authors back on multiple times, but it also, if you're dealing with a publisher or a publicist, having that publicist know that it's going to be a good experience for their author and also a easy experience for them on their end, because they're facilitating a lot of this stuff a lot. Do that. Also, that ties back into my whole thing about the follow-up time, about the fact that I don't normally bug everybody every week. This publisher is handling multiple authors, and that's who you're usually going through. They've got however many requests. They've got to sort through them. Some of them probably do a little bit more research than others. Like I said, I put my channel trailer on there so somebody can click on it. That not only shows them my channel trailer, also lets them go click right on my name and go straight to my YouTube channel so they can see what I've done. I also use a very professional email address in my thing that connects to my actual website. So if they actually go to that website, it's got all my previous author events on it. I'm starting to put my book reviews on there as well. But also, they start out right front and center with my calendar of events. They can go to my webpage right now and see that I've got, I think, 8 scheduled right now. They can see who I have and the fact that I've got people scheduled up for, a few months now. Anyhow, whatever you do to make a good impression. That's all I'm saying. That was a long, long way to say make a good impression. Anyhow, I think this video is getting a little long in the tooth. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. Again, I did absolutely everything wrong with the top 10 authors of 2024 as far as Goodreads is concerned. And I got 2 maybes out of it. And even then, my guess is if I followed everything I just told you about, then the percentages would have been higher. My percentages are higher. I don't have the numbers in front of me because I'm very specific about who I request these days. Not that I always wasn't, but when I started, obviously, I had a lot of authors that I'd wanted to talk to, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I probably reached out to more authors than I do now. Now, for instance, if I even had to tell an author the other day that had reached out to me about a book that was dropping in June, and I'm like, I can't do June. I just can't do June. I've got too many other interviews dropping. Even if I pre-recorded the interview, I really like to have each author have like a week to themselves. And yeah, I just got too much going on. So the last thing I wanted to bring up, because I just remembered, I was thinking about this earlier. At the end of every interview, I do two things. First of all, if they've got a second after it's over, after I'm done recording or after the live stream is over, I ask every author, is there anything I could have done better? Some of them will tell you no, because they go into every one of these either not expecting anything or B, they don't want to hurt your feelings. But some of them will also tell you, is like, hey, no, I was kind of expecting this, or I felt you could have done this better. Do not be offended. Take those things to heart. My early ones, I did get a few pieces of feedback because, again, I wasn't an interviewer. In fact, when I first started these, I wasn't even calling these interviews. I was calling them chats because I was just sitting down and chatting with the author about whatever we want to talk about. We talked about books. Now that I'm a little more comfortable, I can go off. We can go off topic a little bit more with, and still get back to what we started with. Watch the John Scalzi interview if you want to see how that goes. But be willing to learn from that, and hopefully that has made me a better interviewer over the course of time. I do feel much more like I'm doing interviews now instead of just, two guys sitting around talking about books or, a guy and a girl. You know what I'm saying? I'm using the term guys non-gender specific. You get my point. So yeah, definitely be willing to learn from that. The other thing I do, and I do this every time, whoever I had an email for, after the interview is over, either that night or if it's like super, super late, sometimes I'll do it in the next morning, I will send them an email once again, thanking them for their time, telling them, how much I enjoyed it. I have not had to lie about that. I have enjoyed every conversation I've had so far. I have been way too lucky because I've heard some horror stories about some interviews before. Usually, though, that is with people who don't want to be publishing or don't want to be marketing in the first place, and their publisher has pushed them into it. I'm small enough that most authors don't get put on me against their will, or my channel. You know what I'm saying? So I haven't had to deal with that. But thank them for their time, and especially if they've got something else coming up. A lot of times I'll say, if you've ever got any book news or another thing that you want to get out, because I don't just do author interviews anymore. I did my first couple of years, but I also do book reviews, book news, all that type of fun stuff. It's like if you've got something that you want to share, or if you want to be on to talk about your next book or whatever, you've got an open invitation. And again, I've had some authors come on multiple times. It's the one. In fact, most of the ones that I haven't repeated yet is not because I don't want them on again. It's just because I've only got so much time in the day, and there's still so many other authors I still want to get to. So, again, if you've only been on once, do not take that personally. Most of you, almost all of you, I would love to have on again. I worded that specifically just so one of you out there sitting is like, wait, am I the one he doesn't want back? I'm just kidding. Again, I think every single one of my author interviews, we've had fun. There may be a few authors that don't want to come back. That's a different thing. I can't speak to that. But, all right. Again, hopefully this has given you guys some ideas of what to expect, given you some ideas of what to do better, learn from my mistakes and maybe get a better ratio right off the bat, but also maybe temper some expectations. I have talked to a few people where I know, like, they send out these emails and, like, only 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 is responding. That number is automatically going to get better the more you do. That's all there is to it. One, you're going to start having that portfolio of interviews and stuff behind you, which is going to make you look better and more desirable for them to have their author on your channel. And two, again, you're going to learn how to word some of your emails. You're going to learn who to reach out to, when to reach out to them, how often to reach out to them. etc. and so forth. So I promise, if you really want to do interviews, it is possible. You will get there. Everything is a learning curve because, again, I could give you my email and just say, here's my template, run with it. But one, sometimes I change that template. I change it possibly based on who I'm reaching out to. I change it based on whether somebody has been on before. I've changed it based on whether this is a follow up to somebody that I've never had on, or maybe somebody who's never responded. People, different personalities, different relationships. I will change things up. And also, a lot of my stuff is my personality, also, I think, to a little bit shining through. So you're going to have to figure out what works best for you. Just make sure you cover the basics and make sure you stay professional. Now, go watch whatever just showed up here. All right. Have a good one, guys.